OIC, respected foreign ministers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome all of you to Pakistan. The irony is that 41 years ago, the extraordinary meeting of the OIC was held in Pakistan. It was discussing Afghanistan. And since then, all the troubles of Afghanistan started. No country has suffered as much as Afghanistan. 40 years of conflict. And then add to it recently prolonged drought, 75% of the people living off the land. And then, even before 15th of August, half the population below the poverty line. Years of corrupt governance. 75% of the budget supported by foreign aid. Now, a country in this situation, after 15th August, if the foreign aid dries up, the foreign reserves get frozen, banking system freezes, any country is going to collapse, let alone Afghanistan, which has suffered for the past 40 years. So I'm really glad all the speakers before me mentioned the gravity of the situation. Especially I would like to point out what Michael Griffith, Under Secretary of the United Nations Secretary General, what he had to say, the figures he gave. So the point is that if the world does not act, this will be the biggest man-made crisis which is unfolding in front of us. We, the OIC, it's a big responsibility on us, because not only is it the situation in Afghanistan as it unfolds, but it's a religious duty to help them. And I must say that we have to, and I speak to the United States specifically, they must de-link the Taliban government from the 40 million Afghan citizens. Even if they have, they've been in conflict with Taliban for 20 years. But this is a question of the people of Afghanistan. 40 million human beings. And that's why it is very important that action is taken immediately. Already we are late. The Afghan winter, everyone knows, is extremely severe. And these preconditions the Taliban have to, unless they have an inclusive government, human rights, women's rights, do not allow terrorism from the soil. Unless these preconditions are met, the humanitarian aid will not flow, and their foreign reserves won't be, they won't be allowed to have them, or the banking system won't function, won't be allowed to function. This is very important. That first of all, the one time I met the Taliban foreign minister, he categorically said that they wanted to comply with these three conditions. Now the point is, we must understand that when we talk about human rights, every society is different. Every society's idea of human rights and women's rights are different. I just give you an example of the Pakhtunkhwa province, which borders Afghanistan. Because the culture is similar, because Taliban is basically predominantly a Pashtun movement, and there are more Pashtuns on our side of the border. Now, the city culture is completely different with the rural culture. Culture in Kabul was always different to rural areas. Just like in Peshawar, it is completely different, the culture, to the district adjoining the Afghanistan border. So I give you an example. We give stipends to the child's parents to put the girls into school. But in our tribal districts or the district adjoining Afghanistan, if we are not sensitive to the cultural norms of those people, even with stipends, they won't send their girls to school. But if we are sensitive to their cultural norms, without stipends, they're willing to send their girls to school. So this sensitivity, I'm afraid, when we are talking about human rights and women's rights, we have to be sensitive about this. But my big worry is that unless action is taken immediately, and I mean immediately, because we've been saying this for now 2-3 months, unless action is taken immediately, Afghanistan is heading for chaos. Any government, when it can't pay its salaries of its public servants, hospital, doctors, nurses, any government is going to collapse. But chaos suits no one. It certainly does not suit the United States. Because what if there's chaos there, and chaos means the inability, if the Afghan government does not have the ability to fight terrorism. And we know ISIL is now a threat. It has been a threat. We have had attacks from Afghan border, from ISIL into Pakistan. So the only way you can control what is, and ISIL is capable of international terrorism. And the only reason you can deal with it is if there's a stable Afghan government. And same with Pakistan. Our worry is, and remember, Pakistan lost 80,000 people. We were the biggest collateral damage of the Afghan war. Our economy was shattered. Over $100 billion lost to the economy. 3.5 million people internally displaced. Well, the last thing we want is chaos in Afghanistan, more refugees. We already have over 3 million Afghan refugees. To date, we have 234,000 Afghans who've overstayed their visa because their situation in Afghanistan means they can't go back. And remember, this is a country, like most developing countries, who are suffering from the fallout of the coronavirus. COVID-19, we're all suffering from the impact it has had on world economies. So we are in no position to deal with this, another influx of refugees and terrorism. So my request to the international community, to the United States specifically, I know the Europeans are extremely sensitive. They understand the situation. There's a refugee problem not just in Europe, all over the world. So everyone knows that this chaos will lead not just countries like Pakistan and Iran. Other countries will also eventually have refugee problems. But in much richer countries, you have 2,000-3,000 refugees, and there's an issue. The far-right parties raised this issue about refugees. But we poor countries, who are struggling, whose economy is just about getting on their feet, how do we cope with hundreds and thousands of refugees? So it is in no one's interest that there's chaos in Afghanistan. And that's why I was very impressed by the Islamic Development Bank's suggestions of immediate, medium, and long-term ways of helping the people of Afghanistan or making the economy sustainable. I would look forward to the foreign ministers that you will come up with a roadmap by the end of this evening. And that roadmap not only should be pushed by the OIC, by the United Nations, by the European Union, and by, of course, the United States. Because, as I repeat, chaos in Afghanistan suits no one.